There was a time when I didn't know any better, and I was doing things that were slowly diminishing my immune system, diminishing my life force. And there are always times in your life when you're presented with what I call a choice point, where you can walk down this path after you know something, or you can walk down this path and know something, but accept the consequences that are in the future. What I'm talking about is when I stumbled upon a lifestyle that I didn't know there was such a thing. And what I'm talking about is I stumbled across these little tiny bottles over 22 years ago at an outdoor wedding. I didn't know it at the time, but eventually these little bottles, they would change my life. They would change how I approached life and health and the power that I have to make choices for my family, for me, for the people that are in my orbit, and how they interact um, with these truths that I want to share a little bit about today. We all have the tendency to do things as they're modeled. We don't know that we don't know any different. It's like you hear the story about the mom who cuts the ends off the ham before she prepares it and bakes it. And one day she asked her, I think it was her mother or her grandmother, like, why do we do that? And the answer was because the pan that they originally used for the ham was always too small. It had nothing to do with the ham, it had to do with the pan. But because it had been modeled, it was literally passed down from generation to generation. So, have you ever learned something new and then either run with it or not? And how has that served you, whichever way you chose? I'm sure that we all have examples of when we know something and walk down that lane and how it impacts us, and then we walk down the other one not accepting what we know to be perhaps the better option and having it bite us in the butt, right? So what I want to talk to you briefly, because people ask me how like how did you stumble upon this? And I did stumble upon the oils. They met me at a wedding, and then later on by accident, right? By accident at an expo. And I was so enamored by this new, back then it was a very new technology. And of course it smells amazing. And I wanted to learn everything I could. And so I'm the type of person that I just plug my nose and jump right in. And um I went to any and every class, and some of the most impactful things that I learned in the Young Living world was how our foods do not serve us, that are from the mass produced, the processed foods, how our agricultural ways do not serve us. The soil is deplete of any nutrients, and so that impacts the food and it impacts us as we eat that. And the same goes for our cleaning supplies. I was talking with someone recently, and I told her about um, the struggle with uh, now as a new grandparent, and I'm smelling these kids' clothes with they're washed in toxic chemicals, and under the guise of this is good for your baby's clothes. And one of those culprits is Dreft. And this woman, she's in my generation, and she said, yeah, that used to be, like the pinnacle of what we would choose. And I said, well, maybe back then it wasn't so toxic. And what happens, and I think about my grandson being literally wrapped up in a piece of clothing that is soaked with chemicals that his skin is absorbing, and then his liver and his kidneys need to do the work to detox, and eventually it's going to catch up with him. And this has put me on a career pivot. It's put me on a career pivot to enlighten and share with these moms and grandparents, how this is so important, because as our children age, and if we don't um, ensure that what we are giving them and what we are clothing them in and what we are putting over their body in the form of their sheet or their pillowcase or their bedding, it will eventually come back to bite, and it's going to be a chronic problem as we continue. There are solutions, but I digress. So how I came upon the journey was taking these classes, learning about alternatives to what we think is normal, to the Western medical model. It's a sick care system. It's not a health care system. It's not a wellness system. And it empowered me. It empowered me to make choices. It almost gave me permission to make my own choices. It kind of gave me my sovereignty back. I don't have to do things just because it's always been done like this. It may have been good back then, but as time goes on and technologies change, we need to go back to the original. We need to go back to the original things and not all these toxic chemicals. So I encourage you, where in your life have you learned something new and followed the path and implemented? Sometimes you have to be radical. Like if you were in a literally a life or death situation, you would need to be radical and turn everything upside down and go cold turkey on whatever it is, your diet, your cleaning products, whatever it might be. But if you have the luxury, you can do piece by piece and slowly move the needle so that it's not so difficult in your mind. Because when we're overwhelmed, we don't do anything. So pick something. Pick one thing that you believe that you can do and implement it. Is really powerful when you begin to understand that you have the power of choice over your own health, your own well-being, and that those choices influence those around you, friends, family, colleague. So back to the original. How did I get here? And it honestly, now it's so normal. It's such a normal, after finding Young Living and learning the types of things that I've learned about alternative wellness. It's now so ingrained in my lifestyle and my choices. It's not even difficult anymore. And that's where I want you to be. But it starts with that first step. It starts with the first step where you put your health first. The thing is, a lot of times people, they balk against the cost of whatever it is. I'll use the example, Young Living Thieves, the household cleaner. There's like a little bottle. I think it's like 25, maybe $28. And people are like, oh my God. Well, if you knew how long that lasted, because it's so powerful and so, what's the word? I'm going to say dense. Concentrated. It's so concentrated that you only need a capful, which is about a tablespoon, probably honestly less. For a full load of laundry, you need a tablespoon of this liquid gold to get it clean. And it has this very gentle undertone of yumminess aroma, and it's not toxic. You can dilute it and have it in a spray bottle and clean your surfaces. It's just like so budget friendly when you don't look at $28, but you look at how long it will last you for months, unless you got a huge house and a lot of activity or whatever the case may be, a lot of laundry, but still, your house will thank you. Your clothing will last longer. It won't be eaten up by these chemicals. There's so much that we can talk about, but as just a springboard of conversation, consider, where in your life are you ready to make one choice where you get the biggest benefit, nobody else? What do you need to decide to do for yourself? I'd love to help. I'm here to help. I would love it if you would share this information with someone, and I will see you next time.